So Elizabeth Warren, as I mentioned in a previous podcast, and I was kind of touching on in the last segment, is definitely somebody that has cozied up to the donor class and the Democratic establishment, and is trying to garner a lot of their support because she knows that it's going to be to her benefit, especially financially, especially when it comes to, ultimately winning the primary, let alone the general election when she's, if assuming she's the nominee and faces Trump, and she wants to check all those boxes. She wants to make sure that stuff is taken off her bucket list as soon as possible, so that she's ready for taking on Trump, and but right now she claims she doesn't want to take any big money and stuff and in the primary, and then when the general election comes around she wants to do it. I'll get into a little bit more detail on that later. I discussed that in the past episode, but I want to just remind you guys again of that. But I'll get into those details in a bit. But I wanted to read you guys this article. This is actually an article from May of this year, of 2019. And I just kind of came across it not that long ago, and I wanted to talk to you guys about it and bring it up and then kind of get into the details of what it lays out regarding what Elizabeth Warren's true feelings and real kind of view of big money in politics and money in politics in general is. So this is an article from publicintegrity.org, which is actually a great website that covers the role of big money in politics and the corruption that takes place because of that money. So the title of the article is Elizabeth Warren decries big money in politics. Her campaign treasurer embodies it. And so let's get into the body here. So this is going to be a very interesting piece, and soon enough it'll help you get a very good idea of what Elizabeth Warren believes, especially when she has certain people around her who influence her beliefs. So the body of the article starts off with a sizable American flag as her backdrop and supporters toting signs reading, quote, "The best president money can't buy." Elizabeth Warren decried the role big bucks play in politics. Corruption, the influence of money, touches every decision that gets made in Washington, the Democratic presidential candidate and U.S. Senator from Massachusetts told hundreds of people attending her May 16th campaign event at George Mason University in Virginia. Whatever issue brought you here today, I guarantee if there's a decision to be made in Washington, it's being touched, pushed, massaged, tilted over just a little so the folks with money do better than everyone else. So far, so good. Okay, so she's making sense so far. Warren's declaration aligns with her aggressive rejection of traditional sources of campaign cash, from political action committees to lobbyists. Everyone will have access to her, she says, not just wealthy donors. She instituted, quote, selfie lines at rallies. She releases videos of herself personally calling donors who contributed just a few dollars. So here's the part that it starts to get a little fishy. But Warren has also selected for her presidential campaign treasurer a man whose contributions run counter to Warren's statements. Among the most emphatic among the more than 20 Democrats running for president against big money in politics. Dubbed a, quote, personal PAC man, PAC, meaning Political Action Committee. Personal PAC man, two politicians by the Boston Globe more than a decade ago, retired software engineer Paul Egerman, 70 years old, has quietly established himself as a key benefactor and rainmaker for Democratic political committees and liberal causes. Liberal. Since 1995, Egerman and his wife Joanne have given more than $8.4 million to various Democratic candidates and PACs, according to a Center for Public Integrity analysis of Center for Responsive Politics data. Of that, Egerman has contributed $1.7 million to the pro-Democrat super PAC American Bridge 21st Century. Sounds like a fucking real estate company, 21st century. Which is also affiliated with, quote, with a dark money group, raising political cash that can't be traced to its original source. How convenient. In 2012, he gave $56,000 to Rethink PAC, a super PAC that helped Warren in her successful campaign to unseat U.S. Senator Scott Brown, Republican of Massachusetts. And that was the guy that actually ended up taking over the seat of the old seat of Edward Kennedy. So that was a big deal back in the day in 2010, I believe. Yeah. So during the 2017-2018 election cycle, he contributed substantial sums to major super PACs, giving a combined $920,000 to super PACs, Planned Parenthood votes, and Senate Majority PAC, according to Federal Election Commission records. Egerman also serves as a conduit between Democrats and big dollar political donors. Egerman's history with Warren began about a decade ago when he met her on an airplane. He had later become campaign finance chairman for Warren's 2012 U.S. Senate campaign. So that was the one that she ran against Scott Brown the first time, and then she got reelected in 2018 very easily. The 2012 one was close against Scott Brown because nobody really knew who she was. It says Egerman also was a regional fundraising committee member for Obama prior to Obama's election in 2008. In 2012, Egerman told the Boston Globe that he believes wealthy Americans have a responsibility to improve the lives of those less fortunate. It's incumbent upon people like me who've been successful to pay it forward so the next kid has the same opportunity I had, said Egerman, who has worked with the Patriotic Millionaires, a group of high net worth individuals united in their concern about the destabilizing concentration of wealth and power in America. By the way, when it comes to these donors and millionaires and people that, patriotic millionaires, people that claim to say like, yeah, tax me more, totally tax me more. Like, these people are not, they don't really believe in that. That's just that's them playing a role where they want to not seem as big of assholes as the likes of like the Sheldon Adelsons and the Donald Trumps and the Koch brothers and stuff like that. They want to separate themselves from those people who do not believe. Again, to be fair, those people do not believe in raising taxes on themselves to benefit certain social safety nets and stuff like that, building of roads and like infrastructure and whatnot. So while the right-wing figures, right-wing donors and stuff don't believe in that stuff, these people claim to support that. But in reality, in my opinion, I don't have like any special information. I'm just giving my opinion that I believe that they don't truly believe in those things. They're just saying it so that they can help elect or move forward the politicians that they support. Now they support the thing is they support those politicians because in this case the Democratic donors support these Democratic politicians because honestly they just largely agree with them on social issues. They agree with them on gay marriage. They agree with them on women's rights. They agree with them on abortion, I said women's rights, so that's part of it. But, these kind of like social issues, they agree with them on social issues, things that, LGBTQ rights and all that stuff. Like they agree with the stuff that honestly, largely majority of Americans already agree on and have already come to a consensus on anyway. Now, if you asked them that 10 years ago, maybe it would have been a different story. But for the most part, they're like, I'm not a bigot. I'm not anti-gay. I'm not a racist, so that's anything. Like they're not, they're in favor of, as many black candidates black politicians to become, join Congress and stuff like that. So it's like, yeah. So they're not racist. They're not sexist. They're not, misogynistic. They're not, they believe in immigrants' rights. They believe in gay rights. They believe in women's rights. All that stuff. Black rights and Black Lives Matter. Maybe they even claim to be in support of that. So stuff like that. It's stuff that's just it's very convenient for you to support those things because majority of Americans largely are on the side of that because they see that those people, so those different groups, gay people, African Americans, Hispanics, women, these are all people that are involved in big corporations. They're involved in TV shows. They're involved in sports. they're involved in all these things. That's why a lot of people still have someone, a lot of people go and say, oh yeah, I totally love Colin Kaepernick, because Colin Kaepernick was the one kneeling during, or just not even, caring about the national anthem and stuff, sitting down when the national anthem was playing, or kneeling, whatever he was doing. So, and a lot of people are like, yeah, totally, Colin Kaepernick is cool. So like these people will say that now, unless they're like right wingers and stuff, maybe not, obviously, because obviously the right wingers all hate Colin Kaepernick, but for what he did, because he's disrespecting the troops. So, but those people will be on the side of these types of groups and these types of characters, and because they see because they see that those people are involved in the larger kind of scope of society, the whole playing field of whether it's entertainment, TVs, movies, all that stuff. So, and they have to accept that. They have to accept that those people exist, and they have to accept their role in our society. So it's very easy to be on the right side with those issues. But when it comes to getting your taxes raised, when it comes to having Medicare for all, when it comes to ending wars, putting a chokehold on the military-industrial complex, these are the things that these people are not. They either don't talk about it and don't care about it, or they just aren't for it. So they're against it, essentially. So, what I'm saying is they're against, against kind of addressing those situations and taking more progressive positions on those matters. And so largely it just comes down to these people taking the easy road that they know is going to be more palatable to the establishment, while pretending to be, oh yeah, I'm totally in favor of things that people support. And like I said, I guarantee you this guy doesn't want his taxes raised that high. If he does, he wants it very, very little. It's barely enough to even make a dent. And then at the end of the day, he's still going to go and he's still going to want to make his millions. Because he's got to be able to influence the political landscape. Because if he's going to get taxed too high, I don't know what he would consider too high, but if he gets taxed too high, then he's going to be like, oh shit, all my money, it's gone. I don't have any more money. Warren Buffett was doing the same exact thing. Warren Buffett was talking about how, like, oh yeah, my secretary totally deserves to get paid higher, and yeah, blah blah blah. Like, listen, bro, why are you talking about your secretary? Talk about every other secretary out there. You could easily say, yeah, your secretary deserves to get paid higher, but that's because you're the CEO of a entire huge fucking company. So when it affects you or somebody that then you start talking about it. But you have to be talking about people on a larger landscape, on a larger playing field. And that's not something Warren Buffett did, but Barack Obama would go out there and just push Warren Buffett as this guy, like, yeah, this patriotic millionaire, this wonderful millionaire out there that even he says that the system should be better and it shouldn't be the way it is. Okay, so just typical grandstanding and pretending you're on the right side, and when you're just honestly just trying to obviously grift off of the progressives, the progressive mentality and the progressive ideology, essentially. So let me continue on with the article here. It's got a little bit more left. It says, the most essential role of a political campaign committee treasurer, the role Egerman plays for Warren, is to ensure the committee complies with the law. Campaign treasurer's core duties include signing and filing all committee reports and statements, and authorizing expenditures or assigning someone to authorize expenditures and monitor campaign contributions, according to the Federal Election Commission. Several political strategists and campaign finance advocates said having a known donor serve as a candidate's treasurer is a stamp of approval for a campaign's legitimacy and a signal for potential donors to pay attention. Furthermore, treasurers are free to fundraise for candidates, said Miles Martin, a Federal Election Commission spokesman. So Elizabeth Warren is compromised on many, many other fronts. This is an even worse situation for her, because she has this guy that is a donor to her, that is the treasurer for her campaign, her current presidential campaign. And this is the guy that gave her money, and then she's putting him at the forefront of her campaign. And that's just not right. That is not something that you should be doing and thinking it's okay. Because at the end of the day, you need to be putting people in those positions that are going to be fighting for the getting rid of this big money system. Now, she can talk about all this stuff as much as she wants. Oh my God, yeah, the system is totally fucking over people, and it's terrible, and I don't like it, and I'm gonna go out there and fight on behalf of regular people to put an end to this. And then she puts this guy as her treasurer. So that's a problem. So what she's doing is she's kissing up to the progressives like myself and people that watch this show and other progressives out there, trying to suck up to us and pretend as if she has the best interest of us. But at the end of the day, she's not really doing what is in the best interest of us, because as she says these things to our face, in the back door, she's getting these fucking millionaire treasurers to run her, essentially her political, presidential war chest, essentially, or presidential campaign war chest. And that's, what's going to happen when she gets to the general? When she gets to the general election. Now, that's why I have this video here. So this is a video I played for you guys before. It's an interview from TYT where TYT host Cenk Uygur was speaking to Elizabeth Warren and asked her about this very issue. So I played this on a past podcast too before, but let me play it for you guys right now just to kind of remind you guys of what she said, and then I have another clip for you guys after that as well. So check this out, and then we'll talk about it on the other side.
Does this only apply in the primaries, or will you carry this over to the general election or any other election you'll have going forward?
So this is for primaries. Look, I do not believe in unilateral disarmament. We need to win. We need to win in 2020. And when we hit 2020 and we're in a race against Donald Trump, when we're in a race for control of the Senate and control of the House and in control of the state houses and the governor's mansions, in all of those, the Republicans are going to be bringing a lot of money, a lot of power, a lot of dark money, a lot of super PACs, all to the fight. We play by the same rules. And in that one, I say we got to be all in, because we have to beat the Republicans.
So she's making that very clear. She's made it very clear. I don't believe in unilateral disarmament. I don't believe in completely cutting off that access to that money. Now, maybe this wasn't totally clear. You can say, Kevin, listen, this is one interview. Maybe she misspoke. Maybe she wasn't. Maybe she changed her mind. Maybe she, kind of has a different view and maybe wants to make herself a little bit more clear. Now, watch this next interview. Now, she did another interview. This one was with Chris Hayes of MSNBC on his show All In, and this is actually from the same day. I believe it was February 26th. If it wasn't from the same exact day, I think it was definitely around that time period. So if not that day, the next day after that. So now, again, if that first clip wasn't clear enough, here is the next clip. Now listen to this conversation that she has with Chris Hayes. Check it out.
So here's my question. You've been in politics for a little while. You've just recently reelected, and
That's
during
right.
that
One
time,
Senate term,
right? One Senate term, right? So, and during that time, you've done calls to wealthy donors. You've done big ticket fundraisers. You put together a pretty good war chest. I think about $11 million that you had amassed. What does that say about what you were doing before? If this is the right way to do it now, why now and why not before?
So look, I've never actually been in a deeply competitive primary. I get it. Republicans come to the table armed to the teeth. They've got all of their donors, their wealthy donors. They've got their super PACs. They've got their dark money. They got everything going for them. And I'm just going to be blunt. I do not believe in unilateral disarmament. We got to go into these fights, and we got to be willing to win these fights.
So this just applies to the primary. Like, were you to get the nomination, or anyone else to get the nomination, like, just raise all the money you can, however you can.
Yes, but here's what I want you to see that's different about it, Chris. Think about the difference once we're down to the two candidates. If the Democrats have spent the next year in a primary building this thing face-to-face, person-to-person, neighbor-to-neighbor across the country, think of the kind of foundation that we have laid down so that when we're really up against it in the general election, it's not just money to fund television ads. It's all the folks who'll do the door knocking. It's all the folks who'll make the phone calls. It's all the folks who'll reach out to their network, because you know how we're going to win in 2020? It's going to be big. It's going to be people who voted for Donald Trump last time around. It's going to be people who haven't voted at all. It's going to be people who see a vision and a way to make this democracy work, not just for the rich and the powerful, but make this democracy work for everyone.
So she's very, very clear there. Not only does she expand on her point that she made in the interview with Cenk Uygur, but she repeats her, I don't believe in unilateral disarmament. She repeated that. And then she expanded upon it. And then listen to her point at the end there. She said, like, oh, well, listen, you know what, this money, it's not going to just go to TV ads. It's not going to just go to, like, funding, attack ads on my candidate and all that stuff. It's going to be funding the people on the ground. So the money so essentially paying volunteers to go and door knock and talk to, voters and stuff and register them to vote and all that shit. So all the stuff that the volunteers do. Like, oh yeah, it's totally going to go to good causes. That's essentially what she's saying. She's saying the causes that the Republicans do it for, they do it for TV ads so they can smear us, this and that. Listen, that's not a good response. That's what you're basically saying is that Republican bad, Democrat good. Republican bad, Democrat good. So anything the Republican does with that money must be terrible. But then when the Democrat does it, oh, totally trust us. Trust us that we're going to use it in a perfectly normal, good way, and we're going to be very, very not honest, but we're going to be kind-hearted in the efforts that we, in the ways that we use that money. Why should I believe you? That's ridiculous. So, I mean, what kind of track record does that, does that Democrat, whoever, put any Democrat out, that's been who it is. I don't care if it's Bernie Sanders. Even if it was Bernie Sanders, what politician has the track record that, that we should support them with a bunch of corporate money? Now, I'm not talking about small donor money. I'm talking about corporate money. Who has the track record to go out there and use that corporate money for good things? Don't act like giving money to Democrats is some sort of charitable cause. That's what she's portraying it as. Like as if, oh, everything, don't worry. Let me put your mind at ease and let you know that whatever Democrats use that money for, that corporate, millions of dollars of corporate money for, it's totally going to be good. And the way the Democrats, the way the Republicans use it is always bad. But the Democrats are totally, wonderful, kind-hearted actors, and you should totally trust us. Like, no, I don't trust you. I'm sorry. I mean, based on the fact that Elizabeth Warren has had multiple questionable votes when it comes to, helping fund Donald Trump's military budget, so expand his military budget, and she's, hasn't stood up for the rights of Palestinians in their fight against Israel, hasn't voted. I saw a couple votes where she came out against some, terrible, in the terrible endless wars and stuff. But does she talk about ending any of the wars that we're involved in right now? Now, to be fair, she did vote against some military budgets of Trump, but that's not good enough. You have to vote against all of them. So she voted for one in 2017, but then she voted against one in 2018. So does she deserve credit for that? I don't know. I don't think so. That's not, you shouldn't give anybody credit for, half the time doing something right when it involves killing innocent brown people, for no reason, essentially. So, but then, not standing up for the Dakota Access Pipelines, and fighting against the Dakota Access Pipeline, even though she claims I'm Native American, part Native American or whatever. But did you ever stand up for the Native Americans that were that were suffering when a pipeline was going over their indigenous land? No, you didn't do that. So how are you this wonderful, Native American citizen or part Native American citizen? So that's bullshit. So Elizabeth Warren has a lot of questionable things with her. She claims to have taken on the big banks and then, fought them. And at best, as we know, she just wagged her finger at them because what has changed with the big banks? The big banks still exist. The big banks are still screwing us over. Whatever happened with Dodd-Frank, which I believe was implemented before. Yeah, it was implemented before she got into office, before she got into the Senate. I mean, I don't know if she's made any improvements off of Dodd-Frank, added any amendments to it. Tried to improve any kind of regulations that we have had on Wall Street and in the financial institutions. I mean, if she has, it has been very, very minimal. I guarantee you, because otherwise she wouldn't be loved by the heads of those financial institutions, as I mentioned many times, being BFF with fucking Jamie Dimon, who's the CEO of JP Morgan Chase. So Elizabeth Warren is a very, very shady character. This article proves it. Past segments where I've talked about her have proved it. I brushed just kind of quickly over to the fact that she's now meeting with Hillary Clinton and having apparently not a regular, weekly phone calls with Hillary Clinton and probably getting advice from her on how to run her campaign. You just can't trust her. It's not a situation where you can be like, yeah, I'm totally going to trust this lady to make like the right decisions for, Americans. And then, yeah, she should totally be, president because whatever, yeah, because she's a woman and because she's progressive enough, just like Hillary Clinton is. And even though her foreign policy record is terrible, her support among black voters is terrible. It's paltry at best. Whereas you have somebody like Bernie Sanders, who is great on foreign policy, has stood up against the unconstitutional war in Yemen because he declared it unconstitutional, and he basically made it where he used the War Powers Act and kind of, yeah, he basically made it where it's not like a constitutional war, and it's not a legitimate war, essentially, even though Donald Trump has continued it, and he obviously slapped, he obviously vetoed that legislation. But still, I mean, on a kind of a procedural standpoint, Bernie Sanders put his name on that, and so did I think Mike Lee as well, who's a Republican. He's a conservative Republican, and he kind of stood up for that. I think Chris Murphy was another. He's a Democrat. More of a corporate Democrat, but Chris Murphy was somebody that stood up for that as well. So yeah, we've had some decent characters doing it. Now, did Elizabeth Warren do that? Stand up for that resolution? I don't know. I'd have to check that. If she did, that would be nice. If she didn't, I would be very surprised, because that's something you have to put your name on something like that. If you're truly a progressive, as you claim you are, you should do that. You don't even have to be like even like the least, like if you got a Republican like Mike Lee, who's a big time conservative right winger, you got that guy, people like Rand Paul, stuff like that, those kind of people standing up, against these imperialist wars. You should be, as a Democrat, be standing up for that, standing against that as well, and standing up for the amendments that are passed that declare those wars, on Constitution, fight back against those wars, continuing on, essentially. So Bernie Sanders does that when he has a great foreign policy record. He has a great record when it comes to fighting against the big banks and stuff. He's had a couple votes which weren't great, but those were also votes that he probably felt he had to do for I don't know, certain reason, I guess. I don't know. I think there was one, I forgot exactly what was it again? I'll have to look it up, but I don't know. Maybe it'll come up again. But it was a vote that he made when I think it was in 2000, I believe, and it was before Bill Clinton left office, and even though he got impeached, but before he left office, under his own volition, Bernie Sanders voted for this piece of legislation that idiots are claiming that, oh yeah, well, this totally shows the hypocrisy of Bernie Sanders, and it led to the collapse of the economy. That's not necessarily true. I mean, there's no evidence to show that led to any kind of, led to the recession in the Great Recession in 2008, and then the subprime mortgage crisis and all that stuff. But Yeah, but so, Bernie Sanders is not perfect. Nobody is saying Bernie Sanders is perfect. Nobody is saying every single vote he's ever made has been right and correct and 100% wonderful. He's not great on, like, when it comes to drone strikes and stuff. He still supports drone strikes, which is very unfortunate. So again, like, just like his, some votes on economic economic issues, he's not great on some foreign policy issues as well. So he's flawed. Every candidate out there is flawed. But if you want to compare him to Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders is a hell of a lot better than honestly, pretty much any policy that Elizabeth Warren has taken a position on. Bernie Sanders is much better than her on it, and that's just the truth. And I'm telling you that because I know Bernie Sanders won't say that. Now, he'll say he's great on those policies, but he's not going to say he's better than Warren. I'm telling you that progressives that I know, other guys that have, guys and girls that have, YouTube shows will tell you that, because we look at the issues and we know what we're talking about. And Elizabeth Warren, based on this article, based on all these things I just laid out, after, additionally, I was just talking about foreign policy and economic issues, Elizabeth Warren is not somebody you can trust on these matters. And the fact that she has a treasurer on her running, treasurer for her, presidential campaign that's a fucking millionaire, and he's running all that shit. How can you trust that guy to do the right thing and make decisions for your campaign that's going to help you? Ultimately, you probably don't give a shit about helping your campaign, and you just want to, kind of suck up to the people that are, part of the establishment and that are gonna, do just enough to make sure that you are accepted by the establishment while, basically blowing smoke up our asses and pretending as if you're on our side, and then, sneaking that guy in the back door and pretending as if he's like this patriotic millionaire or so. That's complete bullshit. And if she thinks she's going to fool us, like Hillary Clinton tried to fool us in 2016, she's got another thing coming.